From the Ticat Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
The Tiger Cats have gone from pretenders to contenders. Is Rourke the right choice for the Lions? Winnipeg can't stop winning, and there's complete chaos in Calgary. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. 3 Down football lovers, appreciate you joining us, and I appreciate the participation of these fine fellas who let us know how they really feel. Not only is this individual the voice of the Blue Bombers, no one is more in tune with the CFL stats department, not even the stats department of the CFL, and he knows the rules. It's Derek Taylor himself. Thanks for joining us, TT.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I do have to ask you a question, though, because I'm looking at the CFL stats every single day. How do you break down all the stats that you pump out every time? It's amazing to me.
Yeah, I just look for little things that go, well, wait a minute, is this a thing? Is this not a thing? How is this? I just spent, before we came on, 15 minutes trying to figure out fourth quarter rushing stats with the game out of reach and how that affects the MOP race, right? There's always something that pops up in my mind, and I go, okay, I need to know the truth about this. So that's a cause of a lot of consternation in my marriage. I've always got to sneak to the computer for a minute.
Well, he covers the CFL, and in particular, those rival Toronto Argonauts for Rogers Sportsnet. David Morassutti, always appreciate your participation.
I always appreciate being on.
And folks, well, if you're going to go over the middle, this fella's going to leave a calling card because he's going to smack it still to these days. From the Ticats Audio Network, Tiger Cats Wall of Honor inductee Rob Hitchcock. What's up, 4-2?
Not much, my friend. Glad to be back with you again on one of these beautiful shows. Yeah, you know what? It's a great day. I hear there's some rain coming, Bubs, in your area, so I'm hoping it stays out of St. Catharines, but appreciate being on.
Right on. Let's get to business, guys, and talk some football. Tiger Cats earn a walk-off win over the Toronto Argonauts and have now won 3 games in a row. Is this a nice season-ending story, Rob Hitchcock, or Hamilton to be feared?
I think it's Hamilton to be feared right now. I think they are playing the best football right now out of everybody. When you look at their last 3 games, especially the turnover battle and the takeaways that they've done has been pretty damn good. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of games. There's a lot that has to happen, Bubs. When we talked at our last game a couple of weeks ago, we always said as a player you don't want to think of the playoffs yet because you have to take it one game at a time. And the Cats have taken one game at a time, and they've won 3 in a row. And I think it's that medicine has worked. And then also you've got Chris Jones in the defense in the last couple of weeks that has really been an impact on those guys. So I'm real happy to see that they've got 3 in a row, and they just got to keep it going. But going into BC, 10:30 game. We never won there. I think I won once in 10, 12 years I played there. Just with the time change, it's you're playing football at 10:30 at night. It's you gotta put that past you and move on.
David, you were at the game. I don't know how you felt, and I know going into this, they always say in sports it's hard to beat a team 3 times. Well, the Ticats have done it, and I think they're making a statement. Do you?
Oh, I think so. I mean, you look at the way Levi Mitchell has played, especially against Toronto. They have had no answer for Bo. And frankly, we talk about MOPs. He's looked like an MOP in those games, right? If Levi Mitchell's not playing the way he's playing, I don't think Hamilton is talking about the playoffs right now.
DT, you're completely neutral here. You're in the West. What are you seeing from a distance?
It's incredible, the turnaround, right? The fact that Hamilton would have how many more wins if guys just caught balls early in the season, right? Hey, I'm going to put this ball on Tim White. Oh, he pops it up to CJ Avery and we lose on a Brett Lauther field goal. Okay, that's not great luck. They've been the victims of a lot of bad luck, right? 1-score games are ultimately lucky. No one wins 1-score games on a consistent basis year over year, and that's kind of been Hamilton's trouble early on here. When the Bombers played them, it was very noticeable. It was Chris Jones' first game. It was noticeable. Okay, well, now this is different. Zach Collaros had some real troubles trying to decipher what was going on with that drop 8, drop 9 coverage that they ran. I mean, they've got offensive weapons. Levi Mitchell has, he's reclaimed his job, sort of, right? He looks like the best quarterback in the league at the moment. Yet they're just too far in a hole honestly. I could go on forever. The running back thing is super fascinating with it's James Butler, it's Greg Bell. Greg Bell's unbelievable. Now it's Butler, and we're back again, and there's so much going on there. But I feel like they're going to be in a good position for when next season starts because the East probably has gotten away from them just based on standings.
You know, DT, you bring up a good point because really it has been a 3-game win streak. But yeah, I thought it started, and I thought Hamilton were certainly good value for a win and kept Zach Caleros out of the end zone until the very last drive of the game. And I mean, you know it, I'll say it, it's the toughest place to play in Winnipeg. And I thought the Ticats had all the answers. They had balls bouncing off people's helmets that ended up being interceptions. Something's changed with this Ticats team.
Yeah, it was really noticeable that day. You kind of thought, as the schedule approached, right, I just kind of look ahead of the schedule and go, well, this is a win and this is a win, and how will the Bombers do? That game was one that, 8 weeks prior, I thought, roll. But you're right. It took till the very last minutes of that game for the Bombers to even get anything together on offense. And you went, oh, okay. Well, one, this just furthers the questions we have about the Bombers, which we may discuss here. But two, you went, oh, okay. Hamilton is more than, I think they were 2-8 at the time, whatever it was. Like this team might have something here. They've had the talent, and it just hadn't worked. And then now they're the ones capitalizing on mistakes of, hey, Toronto probably scored a little too quickly there at the end there. They probably would have liked to run a little more time off the clock and not let Bo have the ball at all because they were not stopping that Hamilton offense.
Rob, you've probably been part of kind of turnarounds like this. Have you been where you've seen a defense mid-season or a coordinator change? Obviously, and let's not forget the special teams change at coordinator as well, too, where 2 out of 3 coordinators get changed, and all of a sudden, really nothing has changed in terms of players. I know that Chris Jones came in there and he cut George Jr., the halfback, and that's really been it. It's the same players. How does this happen?
I've been on a few teams. We've been on 2-16 teams before where we've lost games, by 2 points, by 3 points, by 1 point. I think there was a total of 8 or 9 games we lost by 21 points total. So it was one of those years that, we weren't a bad football club. We had the players in the room that believed in each other and wanted to go out and win the games and just couldn't get it done. Bubs, we talked about it earlier in the season when the Cats were just giving the ball up so many times and they were finding ways to lose. And when people say that, well, how do you find ways to lose? It's just you're up and all of a sudden something bad happens. It's interception or a punt return for a touchdown the other way. The momentum goes the other way to the other team. And then the body language, we see it on the sidelines. Everybody's just gone down, oh, we're going to lose this game. They're not saying that out loud, of course, but that's the kind of mentality that you get when you start losing games week by week by week. It starts to just get into you and you just lose them. The last 3 to 4 games, they played phenomenal. They're finding ways to win games now, and they've had this club the whole time. And to answer your question about the same players on defense and offense, yes. Mark Washington, great defensive coordinator. He was great a couple of years ago when they had the number 1 defense. Chris Jones came in this year and took the same players off of Mark, but has different schemes, playing that 30 front, that 3-man front, dropping 9, playing zone blitzes out of it. There's so many different aspects in that 30 defense, which I really like. You could get burned on it as well in, if they run the ball a little bit on the 30 defenses. But when you got guys filling the gaps and just believing in each other, and I tell you about guys, the first couple turnovers that you get, the momentum starts to change and the mentality is defense. Let's go fly around and hit people. And that's what I've seen in the last month.
Dave, from a Toronto perspective, all of a sudden there's pressure here because from a Ticats perspective, they're looking at Toronto and they're obviously still kind of keeping an eye on what's going on in the West, which has been really mushy. And of course, we could be looking at a possible crossover for the first time where an East team goes to the West. It's never happened before. But, all of a sudden, is the noose tightening in Toronto?
A little bit. I mean, you look at kind of the body language. I mean, when I went to the locker room after that game, I don't think I had ever heard a locker room so quiet. And I think it just it's the reality of this Argos team where you lose 3 to Hamilton, a team that on paper, looking at records, you should beat, but you lost all three of them, and all three of them, there were glaring errors, right? And I wouldn't say that the Argos are like too concerned, just because they know that they still control a lot of their destiny to make the playoffs. But the mistakes that they're making right now, it puts them in a precarious position, because you wonder, like, what's the solution, right? How do you fix it? And so, and it's been a long season-long thing, right? All the talk about Chad Kelly, the quarterback situation, that really, when you look at the losses lately, especially against Hamilton, defense, I think, hasn't really been given enough of the talk about things that have gone wrong, right? A lot of it has been on Chad Kelly, and deservedly so, especially that Ottawa game. But you look at that Hamilton game, they lost that game because the defense couldn't make a stop. And the defense knows that. I talked to Wynn McManus, and very, very stoic. He's always the right person to talk to, because he talks about stuff, not just how they're playing on the field, but how they're preparing for the game, how they're preparing to get to the game, right? Is everyone showing up on time for the game? Are they showing up ready to play? That's a little concerning when you hear it at this point in the season, but I think it speaks to, injuries have played a factor. Guys haven't been fully into, the game plan week in, week out. But now those excuses will start going out the window, especially with more healthy bodies back.
DT, final thing to you here. I'll just say it straight up, the name, Bo Levi Mitchell. The guy gets benched, and like a little kid, not that he was pouting, but now he gets a second chance. And boy, I don't think he'll ever let go of that starting job for as long as he's a Ticat.
Does that mean I'm not getting any more Instagram pictures of kids in lemonade stands? Is that what we're saying? That's an outrage.
He wasn't happy, clearly.
Yeah, it's so strange, right? Like I kind of went into the season, and folks I was yakking with were like, "Oh, I'm curious to see if Taylor Powell is the next quarterback, the next guy in that Drew Brown line of guys who will get a deal to go somewhere else." And Powell takes the job and then gets hurt almost immediately in that game, right? And so Bo is reluctantly put back into the game, and it always felt a little unfair, because the Tim White in Saskatchewan drop off his face. You go, okay, well, how do you put the loss on the quarterback in that case? These one score game, how do you put these on Bo? Now, I mean, if Hamilton was in a better spot, like Bo's the runaway MOP. If they were even in Toronto's spot, 7-7, or even Ottawa's spot, you go, this guy's the runaway MOP in this year in the CFL, just because of the touchdowns and the yards and keeping things going. It's so strange, but honestly, it's testament to a guy who has a ton of experience and, knows how to navigate, these tricky situations. I always talked about Bo as a guy who he could stand in the middle of a freeway and be comfortable, right? He's got all these big linemen coming past him. He's comfortable in the pocket. Well, it turns out he was pretty comfortable with this situation where they want to take his job away. You're like, oh, okay. I'm just going to get it back, and then I'm going to see if we can get us to the playoffs.
Yeah, Derek, because you're such a numbers guy, and I keep thinking this. He's attempted, I think it's like 470 something passes and been intercepted 13 times. Caleros has thrown much less, been intercepted 14 times. Is 13 interceptions on nearly 500 attempts that much?
Let me just pull up, because I can't do the percentage in my head. It's about 3%. So that 3%. It's not great, but right. It's not terribly bad either. Right. If you were in the low twos, you've had a great season. If you're in the ones, you're kind of mid-career Travis Lulay kind of numbers, right? So 3%'s not terrible. It's probably equivalent to Jake Mayer, but Zach's is really high. Like Zach at almost 4% interception rate. So interceptions divided by pass attempts is a startling number. And it's though. I mean, Rob could tell you there. Some of those come down to bad luck, right? Sometimes you hit a defender in the face and he doesn't catch the ball, and you go, "Oh, not an interception on that one." Yeah. But when you're analyzing it, you go, "That's still a terrible, terrible throw."
Yeah, I could agree with that totally. And it was a long time ago, and I'll bring this up from the '99 Grey Cup. Danny Mack had 28 interceptions in 1 year. He threw for 32. We won the Grey Cup in '99 with 28 picks. So Yeah, I agree. Like a lot of those times, Flutie would was supposed to break in, and he broke out, and Danny threw it to a spot, and it looked like it went right to the defensive back, and it's like, and everyone say, why would he throw it right to him? Well, it was just a little route that he was supposed to be there. So there's been a bunch of those for Bo this year. Again, some really bad luck ones, but he's on the right track. And if I could just stay on this topic just for a quick second, I think when Scott Mladenovich, when we interviewed him, Bubs, about a month ago, when he came back in and started playing the way he is now, it was his decision making that in each game now, where he wants to go upfield, he wants to throw that ball into double coverage sometimes. Now you see him taking it down and actually using his legs and running, or throwing it out of bounds, or throwing it down in the dirt. That's what you're seeing. That's the MOP quarterback that we're used to seeing in Bo Levi Mitchell. So I'm really excited to see the next couple of games, because I know he's just not throwing the ball away anymore, and that's why he's not throwing any picks.
Ottawa Redblacks suffer their first loss at home to the Montreal Alouettes. Ottawa, were they certainly outclassed by the defending Grey Cup champions? And what about their regret, or if there is any regret, after watching Raquel Armstead rush for over 200 yards in his debut with the Riders when they played Calgary, David? What do you think about that situation?
It's very. I mean, I was also surprised when I saw the news that they were releasing him, but I don't know if that's really, when you look at this game and Drew Brown and his play, especially in that first half, you're not going to win a lot of games when your quarterback is playing like that, and it kind of goes to show that schedule's getting tougher on Ottawa right now. I thought they had a pretty easy schedule to start the year. Now you're getting a lot of East heavy, opponents right now. And the East is not easy this year. So I think that's playing, a little more than, the running back, having obviously when you have the running back, you let go for over 200 yards is going to be a little bit of that second guessing a little bit. But I do think, like, again, for Ottawa, your quarterback has to play better, especially in a game where you're going up against, what everyone's calling right now the Grey Cup favorite and the reigning champions. So I think with Ottawa, you have to find, a little bit of the balance in the offense, but you also just have to get your quarterback to play better.
But DT, wouldn't you have to say, though, the quarterback, Drew Brown, can play better if he has a running attack, right? Like, how does that work?
I think this year's been a great example of just the replaceability of the American running back, right? It was interesting watching Raquel Armstead just tear it up for Saskatchewan, and they would have the shots where A.J. Ouellette standing on the sidelines watch it happen, and you go, that's the second highest paid running back in the league, watching a guy off the street, as much as Armstead had played this season. He was free to anybody who wanted him, absolutely tear it up. And Armstead, for all his success in Ottawa, wasn't going to be the starter there, but all of a sudden he comes in and he's awesome. And they go, oh, you know what? We feel like we can do without you, and we'll take Laybourne at it. Like Hamilton is maybe an example I'm going to put in my crib notes of why you should never pay a running back big money, because man, James Butler's on the sidelines and Greg Bell is killing dudes. Like it's certainly running. It helps. I don't think necessarily Raquel Armstead would make an enormous difference in that, just because American running backs are pretty replaceable in our league. But anything to give Drew Brown, it's still his first year, right? He's got some really nice stuff, and then he's got some stuff he still needs to work on, and some stuff that maybe he will not ever get right. But yeah, it sure wouldn't hurt, Bubs, if you had something you could count on to get you into 2nd and 4 and make things a lot easier there.
Rob, it's tough because I think Ottawa, their mindset, and folks, they had the season high crowd, the biggest crowd they've had in years there in Ottawa, and they were smelling blood. Like, they believe that they can contend with the Montreal Alouettes, and they basically laid an egg. And now I would think if you're Ottawa, you're more concerned about the Argos or catching you more so than catching first place, because I think the Alouettes just need another victory to clinch the whole thing.
Well, 2 weeks ago, I think they came into their game thinking that they win this game, they're in the playoffs, and they've got it already. So as players, deep down, you're thinking about it, but at the same time, you got to go into each game and play it and just do it. So I think Ottawa's actually, they haven't impressed me in the last couple of weeks. I know they've lost a couple, but I just feel Montreal's the same way. I don't know why I have this feeling, but you guys jump out of the gate, they play well, and all of a sudden now other teams are starting to get momentum and moving up. So I think Montreal and Ottawa are really looking at the schedule saying, okay, what do we got to do to get this thing done? But the other teams in the league right now are definitely got the momentum and pushing these guys. And the schedule that Ottawa's got left, like I said, they got Toronto, they got Hamilton, they got Saskatchewan. They've got some tough games coming up. So it's not a walk in the park for them, that's for sure.
I have a hypothesis for Rob, if I could.
Yeah.
Why you may not believe Montreal. And I'm with you on the. I'm not sure Ottawa is going to do anything in the playoffs. Montreal 5-0 in one-score games. Ottawa 6-0 in one-score games. They're the benefactors of some, or the beneficiaries of some real luck in games this season, and it kind of leaves me with Ottawa going. I don't want them. Toronto in the playoffs. If I'm Ottawa, I don't really want to see Toronto, but I don't really have a choice, right? Like I would love to win the East and only play one game.
And I'm wondering if Masoli is the guy there right now. I mean, Drew's been knocked up. He's been injured like twice in the last 3 weeks. I'm wondering, and ineffective, and it's certainly ineffective in Hamilton. I'm almost wondering if the veteran quarterback might be the better answer out there, David.
Like obviously when we talk about him getting that start and getting that first win under his belt in so long, it was a great story. You also have to just be careful with, the situation you're putting him under. I think, you have him there for a reason. You kept him around for a reason, right? Like Drew Brown is the guy, but at the same time, Ottawa wants to finally show that they're making that positive step forward of being a team that can go to the playoffs and do something, right? They've been waiting so long. But I mean, the last few weeks, these haven't been nothing games, right? These have been pivotal games against, teams that you are going to have to, as Derek said, you're going to have to beat these teams if you're going to want to go and be a playoff team and go far in the playoffs. So I think you really have to decide, is this a time where you make that change just because as these games are all pivotal? I think you can't, there's no margin for error for Ottawa right now. At the same time, that margin for error also gets magnified by, if you make that quarterback change, what's that going to do for Drew Brown's confidence, right? As you said, injuries have played a bit of a factor, but also just the whole team hasn't really been. There's been something off with the entire team. I don't think it's just the quarterbacks, but at the same time, it could. This is a really tough situation for Bob Dice, and I think there's one of the more critical decisions he's going to be making down the stretch.
And the interesting thing is, and I listen to all the media, especially the post-game shows for all of you, whether it's Derek or Winnipeg, everywhere. And it's interesting to me, and of course, we're talking about fans who can be fandom. You got to remember, Ottawa, back-to-back 4-14 seasons, 3-12 or whatever it was the year before that. The people in Ottawa are calling out Bob Dice. They're kind of jumping off the bandwagon, DT. This is kind of a scary situation, and I know the Ottawa organization, the Red Blacks organization, want to make a mark this season with their public.
Yeah, and winning a playoff game would be a great way to do that. Hosting even the East semifinal would be great, because it's funny how quick we can forget how cold it was for so very long, right? I was in Ottawa in week 2 of 2019 as Ottawa went to 2-0, and Saskatchewan, I was doing games for, went to 0-2 that day, and then things were great in Ottawa, and then they lost 15 of their next 16 games, and you go, oh boy, it's going to be a long winter. And it was a very long winter until this year, right? And now they're winning games, and there's excitement, and they kept winning at home, and things are great. This is a massive step forward in 1 year for the Ottawa Red Blacks. And you look at them and go, okay, well, in the offseason, we can do this. And hey, we got back what we feel is our best offensive lineman on a contract extension. Our quarterback's we've got backup quarterback who can help us out. Michael Wakefield murders people. Like, we've got, if we get a little bit of health going our way, if we get 2023 Winnipeg Blue Bombers type health, we might be the best team in the CFL kind of thing, which might be a little far, but you know where I'm going. Like, if you get health luck, you're all of a sudden you're feeling pretty good about yourself. So it's really good in Ottawa. It's just we move the goalposts on them a lot as fans, don't we?
I agree. One thing that I've seen, guys, in the last couple of games especially, and sometimes when I watch games, I don't necessarily watch the quarterback throwing the football. I watch the interior stuff. I watch what's going on the bench as a player, and that's the kind of how I watch games. And the last couple of games, I've really seen, like I always talk about body language, guys coming off the field, bickering at each other a little bit, and then walking away. Whenever I could see it on TSN, I saw that a couple times, and I don't know if it's the pressure. They lost the last two. I don't know if it's that pressure on them that, hey, all we need is one more and we're in. But I really see that, and that could go the opposite way pretty quickly if you're starting to bicker at each other over a couple of losses or a couple of plays that they're not in communication on defense, or there's an overthrow in the offense. I've been seeing that, and it's not good for a club. I've been on those teams before, and we've gotten rid of a few guys because of that. So it's not healthy.
Well, Kitch, to that same point, I'm going to stick with you on this here, because from the player perspective, and I'm going to go to Raquel Armstead, right, who was a guy that was fourth in the CFL in rushing with Ottawa, and apparently there was some discussions on the sidelines that weren't team friendly. There was a couple of selfish PI penalties that he had taken, and the organization said we're not going to have it, and they let him go. And to Derek's point, anyone was there for him to take. And Saskatchewan obviously they've got injuries there. They take a roll with him. He runs for over 200 in his debut. Is this one of those things where, as a player, like your first time, you just want to show the league that who you are?
Well, it's a fresh start. I can't talk on what happened in the locker room or what was said or anything. But if that was going on, and he didn't fit in the locker room, we've had a bunch of guys like that where, Ronnie Lancaster came up to Danny Mack and I and said, hey, is this guy fitting in the locker room? Heck of an athlete, great receiver. And it's like, no, he's not fitting in. He's not gelling with the guys. Boom, next week he's gone. So that does happen. But again, things have changed over the last 20 years since I've been playing. But I think that locker room, that nucleus, that gel, that family that all the players talk about all the time, the camaraderie, if there's a couple guys in there that aren't fitting in, it's time to go, because you don't want that to trickle down into the rest of the team, because it's bad news.
Well, and that feels like what a strong organization does, Rob. Like, I think of Saskatchewan the past couple of years, and you go, there's some guys in there that I wouldn't necessarily want in the locker room with me. There's the whole Garrett Marino thing from 2022, but it feels like a strong organization goes, yeah, you know what? You might be one of our better players. You might be our best player, but you do not work here, so get out. Yeah. That feels like something a strong organization and a coach and a GM who want to build the right type of organization. It feels like the kind of move that they would do.
I agree totally.
Head coach Rick Campbell has revealed early in the week that Nathan Rourke will remain the Lions starting quarterback despite being benched in their most recent game against the Argonauts. Now, if you were coaching the Lions, David Morassutti, who would you start Friday against Hamilton?
Yeah, I remember a few weeks ago we were on the show. I was on the show here with Farhan, and he was adamant it was going to be Vernon Adams the rest of the way going forward.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was.
And I personally, I just didn't see it. I think that you bring Nathan Rourke back up here, and you give him all that money for a reason. Like, I think it was always going to be his team going forward. I mean, for this year, maybe after that first game, it was like pump the brakes a little bit there, but I just think, like, you go with the player that's. I think the injury risk for me with Vernon is one that I think is tough to ignore. He's been it hasn't always been performance. I thought Vernon was going to be the runaway for MOP this year with the way that he was playing right off the hop, but I think with the injury, and then Rourke has especially after he got over the first loss there. He started to show why people were so upset of him leaving in the first place to go and try out for the NFL. So I would probably go with Nathan Rourke, but it's tough because if it doesn't go well, people are gonna second guess that decision. But I just think I like what I've seen from Rourke since he's come back, and I know he had a rough game against Toronto, but no one on BC had a good game against Toronto. Like, the offensive line really didn't give Rourke much of a chance. So I do
either
think
quarterback a chance.
No, either one, especially when Vernon comes back. I was surprised they made that move because I didn't think that quarterback was the problem. The game was close when they made that decision. I think it's just a little bit too much, like overthinking a little bit on Rick Campbell's part. Like, you stick with the guy that's kept you in this game, and eventually, I think they would have eventually figured it out. But yeah, I think you just gotta, if you're gonna go with Rourke, just stick with him. Don't go with the seesaw, because that makes things even much more complicated.
Derek, if I remember correctly, his first game back, Nathan, was against the Bombers, if I remember correctly.
8 of 25, yeah.
Your thoughts?
For me, it would be Rourke, and I wouldn't really think too much about it. There's been, in my mind, there's been some revisionist history about how Vernon played in the BC offense, because there was that stretch where it was so great, right? He brings a team to Winnipeg, drops 500 yards on them, and just murders the Bombers. But before he got injured / Nathan Rourke came back, they'd lost 2 in a row, including getting shut out by the Bombers, right? Like, yes. Vernon was 5-3, and he was absolutely going to win the MOP award because we're in a weird season here, but they were 5-3 with Vernon at the helm. And if you remember that Winnipeg game, 25-0 Bombers, just over 100 yards of offense there. He had nothing working for him, and he couldn't create plays when nobody was open. He'd have his first read, and then, oh, that's open. Okay, I've got time in the pocket, but why can't I find anything? Oh, okay, I'm done. And that was the second of 2 losses in a row. He gets hurt. Rourke comes in. Rourke's play from 22 was entirely unsustainable. I think we're finding out now. 20 touchdowns on 56 deep balls is a ridiculous percentage, but you brought him back for a reason. And Nathan, I don't know that there's anything Vernon brings that Nathan doesn't have, right? It's not like you're going from, if Trevor Harris, all of a sudden aged 5 years in a day, well, Trey Patterson brings a run element. Well, Rourke has a run element. We can weigh out which one's better, but both of them can throw. Both of them can certainly scramble and make plays out of nothing and make plays out of structure. So I don't know the argument for, apart from we're just trying to change things up and we just want a different cadence or a different voice in the huddle, whatever you want to say. I don't know what I think Vernon does better than what I believe Nathan Rourke does.
Here's a couple of things to think about, guys. I don't know how do you phrase this? And I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. Only one receiver remains from that 22 year that Nathan Rourke was there. If you're Vernon Adams, all those guys that you flew in to work out with in the offseason, that you had some success with early in the season, are your guys. And I'm wondering, I'm not saying that there's fractured in the locker room because everyone's going to do as they're told, but wouldn't you, Hitch, kind of feel like, well, Vernon's kind of my guy, not the guy. We understand why you brought in Nathan Rourke, and we heard a lot about Nathan Rourke, but I haven't played with Nathan Rourke. Is there anything to that?
Well, again, I'm not going to take anything away from Nathan. We all know what kind of quarterback he is and what he's going to be in this league, but when you're gone for 2 years and you go to the NFL and you have a different field, different size of field and different receivers, and you're throwing the ball a little bit differently, I say that Vernon Adams at the time, he's thrown for 2,500 yards this year on 9 games. He's got 14 touchdowns. Like, he's your guy. He didn't do anything besides getting injured a little bit, but 5-3 record. And then you bring Nathan back, who, yes, he's the highest paid player, going to be the highest paid player in the league, but he hasn't been up here for a couple of years. You got to give him that space. Is it a money situation? I don't think so, but BC has gone downhill. Nathan's got 5 games under his belt, and he's got 1,000 yards in passing and 4 touchdowns, I think it is. So you haven't seen the Nathan of 2022. I think I've seen definitely what he can do and parts of his game that he brought back in 2022, but at the same time, he's not there yet. He just needed a little bit of time in this league to get used to the field dimensions again and to get used to those receivers. Because to answer your question, yeah, Vernon Adams had these guys come up and start working with these receivers and these running backs and throwing balls and getting used to the timing. That was off for the first couple of games.
Derek, just because I know you love the numbers. 26 out of 36, 320 yards, 4 touchdown passes in virtually 3/4 of work against the Hamilton Tiger Cats in their first meeting. Those were VA's numbers.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough to kind of justify this if you're Vernon deep down in your heart, and he'll never say it because we all know what a team guy he is. He'll never say those things. But boy, like, for those that were there, Rob, you were there. That game was over by halftime. He was spectacular.
Yeah.
It's hard to deny that.
Well, no, absolutely not. And the thing, so the Bombers had the first game against the Lions, and a lot of our conversation was 2022 was Nathan Rourke. Is he the greatest player we've seen since Doug Flutie, or was it a guy who ran incredibly hot for 10 games? And was it Jordan McSimic? I end up taking a lot of the season back to, I watched the BC offense and I go, man, there's Justin McInnes wide open on a deep crosser again. How is this happening? This is the 5th time this game. The guy's been wide open across the middle for a 20-yard gain. How is this happening? And I just thought, man, this is some offensive coordinating really happening here. And this is something that defenses are just not ready for, because how many times would you be watching on TV? Obviously, you should always listen on the radio because it's so much better there. But if you're watching on TV, you go, why is there no defender on the screen? This is incredible. You go, okay. And then, I mean, so I wondered how much was Jordan McSimic, how much was Vernon Adams, how much was the combination of the two. And then it's gone dry for the offense, regardless who's been at quarterback since I forget what game was with the Bombers, week 7, week 8. It's dried up. It's not nearly the same. I don't watch this BC team and think, oh yeah, they've got a 500-yard game in the holster anytime like they put on the Bombers in week 3. So I think we're seeing a lot. Chris Jones brought it to Hamilton. Edmonton's still doing it with Shivers. The Bombers are literally running 9 defensive backs on the field. 3-man front with 9 defensive backs, no linebackers to be seen, going, you know what? Try to find a hole in this. And quarterbacks are responding, I'm in a lot of trouble here. I don't see it. So I wonder if, and exactly to your point, Rob, run the ball. I think maybe defensive coordinators have caught up with what I thought was just Jordan McSimic plus Vernon Adams genius. And now as a duo, for lack of a better word, or a trio with Nathan Rourke, they have to figure their way out of that. I've wondered, and I can't possibly, I'm not nearly smart enough to diagnose this, if it's D coordinators have caught up with their offensive coordinator, and now they all have to find a way forward as the playoffs come.
Well, David, execution obviously is the main thing in these kind of situations, and obviously it's got to be a defense that plays well, too, that I thought Chad Kelly ripped up pretty good, especially in the second half in their last meeting at BC Place. To the quarterback question again, too, I mean, we kept hearing this is a good problem to have. Well, when you're hosting and let's not forget, everyone says we're not thinking about it, but don't tell me the BC Lions organization aren't thinking we need to be in the Grey Cup this season we're hosting.
Oh, 1,000%. I've been on this. Part of the reason I think they brought Nathan Rourke back is they were leaving no stone unturned on their push to get to the Grey Cup. Like, how much they've put into investing in this Grey Cup, making this a great event for BC and the Lions and everything. Like, this is what the season was all meant to be about, is getting to that Grey Cup. And I think, like, when you looked at before the Toronto game where BC was trending, it's like, okay, they're getting back to the team that, you could see going to that Grey Cup. But it was the balance, right? Nathan Rourke was thrown for over 300 yards, but William Stanback was also running for over 100 yards. Like, I think that's something I think that's been forgotten a little bit in BC, is that balance and making, don't put your defense in a tough spot because you're having so many 2-and-outs and things like that. But yeah, BC, I think there's no team right now that has more pressure on them to go far, or don't make the playoffs, but to go far in the playoffs than BC, because missing out on a chance to play in your home Grey Cup, it's a tough one, right? I remember back when Toronto was the host city for the Grey Cup in 2016, when they didn't, I mean, they were nowhere close, but when like I was talking to the players, like, yeah, it's gonna hurt watching other teams play in our stadium for the chance for the championship. Like it's something that, you know, as soon as it was announced BC was going to be hosting the game, there was a lot of that. All right, this is our chance to now really make that, you know, cement ourselves in this city, right? That's what they've been doing these last few years, really pushing themselves up in that city. Being in that Grey Cup would mean a lot to them.
Interesting scenario. Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned. All right, guys. I mean, just another slate of unbelievable games with so much meaning. We'll start here. Edmonton at Winnipeg. That's a back-to-back. Winnipeg wins 27-14, if I remember correctly. Hamilton at BC. Ottawa at Sask. Montreal at Toronto. Rob Hitchcock, the game of the week is...
They're all huge games. Like when you're, especially if I'm talking a little biased on the Cats, I think you want Ottawa to beat Saskatchewan. Like if Hamilton's going to have an opportunity to get there, it's going to probably be on the crossover. And you look at Edmonton, Calgary, and Saskatchewan, and you kind of want that third place team in Saskatchewan right now to get beat. So it gives Hamilton an opportunity. But I mean, yeah, like you just said, David, is that, you know, BC has got the Grey Cup this year. They want to win every single game to get there. They've got a tough game as well. So they're all really tough games. I'm just a little biased. I said I wasn't going to do it this, Bubs, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. We're not going to look ahead, but I actually looked ahead and see what the Cats have to do. And I'm like, so the Argos have to go 1-4. We got to go 4-1. And then I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen. So let's figure out something else. So I did a couple scenarios, but you just got to figure out one game at a time, like we talked about, and hope the chips fall where they may. But I think the Hamilton BC game is going to be a good one. But I'm hoping that Ottawa beats Saskatchewan.
Well, the crazy thing is if Hamilton, I mean, I know there's sort of this, well, yeah, 2 games is nice. 3 games is that's an actual streak. But holy mackerel, if Hamilton go into BC and win and make that 4 in a row, like alert.
Wasn't it last year or the year before? I forget what it was, or I can't remember what it was. Didn't they win 8 in a row to get into the playoffs? I don't know how many years ago that was, but you're the stats guy, Derek. You got to figure that one out. I think the Cats won, their last 8 to get in. To get the playoffs a few years ago, but I'll think of that one later. But
I certainly remember the year June Jones replaced Kent Austin, and they missed out. They did not get in, but they won. They won 6 of 7. Out of just all of a sudden, and made it right down to the very last.
It can happen, guys. It can happen.
Like crazy things can happen, right? But in the reason, and actually they lost because someone else won. That was the reason why they got in. But that was the June Jones year. That was one of Luke Tasker's final years as a player. David, just so many games to ponder. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm not. I'm going to take the homer out of it. I think the Tiger Cats Lions game is going to be massive. You got Hamilton playing for their playoff lives, and for BC, just before you go on the field, Winnipeg is going to be taking on Edmonton. If they're watching that game, I'm sure they'll be keeping eyes on it. First place in the West is going to be crucial for them, right, to host that playoff game. So they're going to watch that game, then they're going to host their own game and be like, this is an opportunity for still to get first. So I think that game has so much implications on this playoff picture that it's going to be very fascinating to watch.
DT, I love your game too. The Battle of the Ford brothers.
Yeah, and if the Bombers got 6 turnovers in that game, they forced 6 turnovers and scored only 27 points, and you go, that's not good. The defense was fantastic, holding down Trey Ford and then eventually MBT. Not good. So that one, but I'm with David in that Hamilton BC is the biggest one for me. Just think of BC going into that game. Hamilton's making this run. Oh my goodness! And you guys talked about how tough it is to come west, but if Winnipeg wins that game, BC loses. Now Winnipeg needs one more win to clinch the West Division. Yeah. Oh boy, we can't let them get away, so we absolutely have to win. If Winnipeg loses that game, which BC will know early in its game, okay, hey, we win this game, we're tied now. We lose the tiebreaker, but we're even on points with them. I think that one is enormous because it could be the end of BC's quest to win the West. And I'll always keep dropping this stat. 60% of the teams that get to the Grey Cup since the millennium have been the number 1 seed in their division. It's an enormous deal, especially in a West that is this crowded, that you only have to win one coin flip and not two coin flips.
Yeah,
you have to win the West this year. You have to win it in the regular season this year. So that I'm going to watch. Like, I'm going to speed through the post-game show so I can watch that Hamilton BC game for sure.
I'm going to take a nap before so I can watch here at 10:30.
You know, Derek, this is crazy to me. Like, I mean, again, as I tell you, I listen to all you guys on your post-game shows, your pre-game shows. It's so interesting me to get the different perspectives from all of your from your fan bases, and of course, you guys, the broadcasters. Like, in what world are you right now thinking that, you know what, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers could finish first after the start that they got off to?
It's unbelievable, right? Week 3 of last year, we thought, did this team all of a sudden get old because BC just came in here and 30-6 just wiped their feet all over their jerseys? They go on to a 14-win season. We were selling our stock hard at 0-4. What's wrong? It's more than injuries. It's more than replacements on the offensive line. Everything is the worst. We're not making the playoffs. I got to start booking tickets so I can see a playoff game in Regina because it's only a 6-hour drive. And yeah. They win 8 out of 10. Ontario Wilson goes from nobody to, oh my goodness, this kid is really good. Okay, here's the run game. Okay, the defense figured itself out. Sergio Castillo's banging in multiple 60-yarders, the first guy in history to do it. Setting records for 50-yard field goals. The only thing that hasn't come around is it would be great if the offense could not wait till the final drive against the Ticats to perform in a game, right? That's the only thing. It's been such an incredible turn that at 0-4, we thought, how will they get to the playoffs in the next 14 games? And here, 10 games later, we're like, yeah, they're this close to clinching first place. It's unbelievable what's happening.
And I think you just said it there too. They haven't played their best game yet. Like complete, a complimentary game where all three aspects played really, really well, and we wiped someone's seat. Like it's incredible to talk about what's happening there. David, the Argonauts, big opportunity for them as well too, against Montreal. And again, if you tighten things up against Montreal, then all of a sudden, I mean, the East, it's just a mess.
Yeah, and especially Toronto doesn't want to have to go on the road for 2 games in the playoffs, right? They want to have at least one, at worst, the one home game. And especially, you got to stop the bleeding, right? They have to find a way to stop the bleeding, and the defense especially. And, like, Montreal, you know what you're going to expect from them a little bit. They don't – they're a team that, Toronto got the win earlier in the year with Cameron Dukes at quarterback. Let's see if Chad Kelly can get a little retribution. Last time he played Montreal was in that East Final, right? So can he? I know that's late, but he was around. Whether he was actually there, we don't know yet. We're not too sure. But for him, I'm curious if that how much of that game will be lingering in his head a little bit, especially if he makes a mistake early on like he did last time.
Hitch, Ottawa, Saskatchewan, too. I think that's interesting, too. Ottawa just so looking to bounce back. And, Saskatchewan, as we talked about, too, I mean, I didn't even realize that. They had gone, basically 2 years without winning a game after Labor Day, and they finally win one last week. I mean, hopefully renewed confidence for them after, but then some would say, well, they beat Calgary. Like, it's
a win's a win. A win's a win. It doesn't matter. It gets the guys sparked up in the locker room again and gets them moving on the right track. So that one game, whether it's 5 games in a row or 1 game in a row, it doesn't matter. When you have that momentum going, you guys, a win does a lot in the locker room. It really does. I'm looking forward to all the games this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be a real good calabash of games, guys. Of course, I think we're all looking forward to watching them. I've certainly enjoyed listening to you guys talk about these games as well, too, the trends of what's going on. You guys have been outstanding, brilliant. Of course, there are people out there that want to connect with you. Hitch, is there a way for people to connect with you if they don't like what you have to say?
I got a phone number, but I'm not going to give that out.
905.
Yeah, 905. I'm in the 905 business.
You're the 905. Okay, that's somewhere in St. Catharines in 905 and not on social media. Yeah. So what Hitch says that's it. That's enough.
And you can get us on our our Ticat's audio network. That's all you can reach me on. I'm not giving anything other information out.
Oh, poor producer's just gonna have call after call after call today.
I want to talk to Hitch.
DT, I know you do like to chat with CFL fans out there.
Yeah, at DT on OB on Twitter is the best place to go for that. I'm on some other social media, and you can always hit up the text line if you listen to the broadcast. But yeah, at DT on OB, and I end up with some actually interesting conversations instead of just people. There's people yelling at me like you're a moron, but I had a poll and it was, when will they change this rule? And the overwhelming response was, shut up, Derek. So I get some of that, but yeah, at DT on OB is the place to go.
Yeah, David, of course, people want to talk Argos. They named great crowd, by the way, in that Hamilton game. Great atmosphere. I love, BMO Field is a great place to watch a game. I just wish more would go on a more consistent basis. But that was a good game on Friday.
It was crowd. Even if it's not a full crowd, they always bring it. So it's always a great atmosphere, as you said. Yeah, you can chat with me on X at @D_Morassutti and follow my stuff over at sportsnet.ca.
There's just one real quick thing I have to get through, you guys, because I love talking to you guys. Derek, I'll start with you quick. All CFL, your thoughts? What's
the name change?
The name change. All CFL. You down with that?
It'll probably clear up my Google searches, because when I search CFL All-Star, I sometimes will get East and West when I'm looking for who was the ultimate winner. So for my Googling habits, I think it's probably better.
David?
I like it. I think as it clarifies, just putting players where they're supposed to be. Who's the best in the league versus the two different divisions.
Hitch, how many times have you been All-Star?
I don't know. I got to look somewhere.
Let me Google.
3 times, I think. Three times, I think. 3 times East. I don't know.
Would you have preferred to be called All CFL?
All CFL? Yeah, I think it's good, because way back in the day, used to just call us, the guys from the States used to say cash flow low, CFL. And I'm like, really? Why are you going to say that for? So if you're saying All CFL, okay, that's fine. Now it's better. But yeah, all
three-time East All-Star, twice All CFL.
Okay. Yeah, you know what?
See, it's cleaner that way.
Derek, I have a couple things on that. This is a whole nother show we can get on, but we had Ben Calhoun, who he's one of the greatest players that ever played, but he was American. He wasn't Canadian. His grandfather was Canadian. He beat me out like 5 times, so that's another story. I'm just kidding. He's a great player. But
football fans, Ticats Audio Network is certainly where you want to be for the Tiger Cats push to the playoffs. Lots of daily content on the build-up to the game day at BC Place, and we'll have you all primed right up to kickoff. Join us on Friday, starting at 9 o'clock for all the fun. Black and Gold meeting the Lions on the Ticats Audio Network. Thanks so much for you guys for your participation again. Look forward to chatting with you again, and I look forward to having a conversation with all you guys again as we present the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. Thanks for checking in. We'll see you next week.